Imagine money standing before you as a person. Imagine it with ears to hear, feet to follow, hands to give. What would you say to it? Would you complain? Would you beg? Or would you welcome it as family? Speak rightly, and money will never forsake you again. In this teaching, I will show you how to speak to money as if it were a person, why it listens, and why it must obey the voice of your imagination. You will learn why money avoids those who chase it, why it hides from those who fear it, and why it clings to the one who honors it as alive. By the end, you will know how to make money follow you as faithfully as a child follows its mother. I know your struggle. You have worked hard, yet money slips away. You have prayed for more, but still the bills pile high. You have treated money as though it were cold and lifeless, a thing to be calculated and counted, and so it has fled from you. But I will show you a different way, the way of imagination. Money is spirit, clothed in form, and spirit responds only to voice and feeling. When you talk to it as alive, you are not pretending, you are commanding. And once you understand this, the endless chase will end, and money will begin to chase you. In this message, I will reveal 3 things. First, why you must treat money as a living person, not as a dead object. Second, how to speak to it so that it cannot resist you. And third, the reason money will follow you everywhere once you have claimed it as your companion. Along the way, I will open the scriptures to show you that this secret is hidden in plain sight, and I will give you testimonies of those who dared to try it and found wealth flooding to them. By the end, you will know that the voice of your imagination is the true magnet of money, and you will never again fear its absence. You will see why lack was always an illusion, and why abundance was waiting all along for the sound of your command. Here's something most people completely miss, and it is the very reason they chase money for a lifetime, yet never feel its companionship. They believe money is dead. They think of it as numbers on a screen, ink on paper, cold coins in a jar. They treat it as if it were lifeless, as if it had no ear to hear, no heart to respond, no spirit to obey. And so, when they beg for it, it does not answer. When they fear it, it flees. When they cling to it with trembling hands, it slips away, for who among us could ever cling to a corpse and expect warmth in return? Yet I tell you, money is not dead matter. Money is spirit made visible, imagination clothed in form. And the moment you shift your concept of it, the moment you stop seeing it as a lifeless object and begin to see it as a living presence, everything changes. Think for a moment how you have been taught to think about money since childhood. It doesn't grow on trees. Save every penny or you'll have nothing. The rich are greedy. There's never enough. These sayings are repeated until they are carved into the subconscious. And what picture do they form? They form the image of money as something scarce, something hostile, something cold and uncaring. And because imagination is the only reality, that image becomes your experience. You treat money as though it were unwilling, and so it flees. You treat it as though it were cruel, and so it bites. You treat it as though it were indifferent, and so it ignores you. The outer world is only the shadow of the inner concept, and if your concept of money is lifeless, then lifeless will be your bank account. I once knew a man who worked harder than any I had ever seen. He labored from dawn until dusk, saving every coin, tracking every expense, calculating every figure. Yet no matter how much he earned, the money seemed to vanish as quickly as it came. He lived in fear of bills, spoke of money as slipping through my fingers, and every time I saw him he would mutter, "I can never hold on to it." Do you see the error? He had turned money into a thief, an enemy, a cruel master. He had personified it without realizing it, and his words were the decree of his imagination. And because assumption, though false, if persisted in, hardens into fact, his world never changed until he changed his concept of money itself. Here is what I want you to see. Money is not object. It is relationship. If you treat it as dead, you will never feel its loyalty. But if you treat it as alive, you will discover that it longs to serve you. This is why I call this section Money as a Living Presence. For once you dare to speak to it as if it hears, Once you dare to imagine it standing before you as a companion, you begin to unlock the law. Scripture does this again and again. Wisdom is spoken of as a woman crying in the streets. Sin is crouching at the door as though alive. Love and death and wealth are personified, because everything in creation is imagination clothed in form. When you learn to speak to money as a person, you are not pretending you are speaking the language of spirit. So pause now and ask yourself, how have you been speaking about money? What words have you carved into your inner mirror? Do you call it scarce, cruel, fleeting? Or do you call it faithful, abundant, willing? That answer reveals why money has treated you as it has. For the way you speak to it is the way it answers you. And tonight, if you dare, you will begin to change the conversation. What I am about to share might seem counterintuitive at first, but once it takes root in you, it will transform the way you look at every coin, every bill, every balance in your account. You must see money as spirit, for everything you behold in this world is spirit clothed in form. Nothing is truly dead, nothing is truly lifeless, nothing is mere matter. The entire universe is imagination pushed out, and imagination is not a cold principle, but the living God himself operating in you as your own awareness. When you look at money and see only paper and metal, you are deceived by appearances. When you look at money and think only of numbers moving from one column to another, you have missed the mystery. Money is simply the condensation of consciousness, the visible garment of invisible spirit. To treat it as lifeless is to cut yourself off from its true source. To treat it as alive is to recognize that it flows from the same fountain of imagination that gave you breath and gave the stars their light. Think of it this way: a child who longs for attention, who desires to be seen and spoken to, will grow restless if ignored, will grow sullen if scorned. But the same child, when spoken to kindly, when honored with affection, will cling to you, will laugh with you, will follow you everywhere. So it is with money. When you fear it, when you scorn it, when you chase it as though it were unwilling, it grows restless and leaves. But when you speak to it as friend, when you honor it as a faithful companion, when you welcome it without shame, it draws near and refuses to depart. The same God who has personified love and wisdom in Scripture has clothed abundance in the form of money, waiting for you to speak to it as though it hears. I remember a student who told me she had always felt uneasy around money. She would say, "It frightens me. I don't know how to keep it. It disappears from me." And her life echoed those words every time she received more. Expenses rose to match. Unexpected troubles swallowed it up. I asked her to try an experiment. Each time she opened her purse, she was to say aloud, "You are faithful to me, you multiply with me, you belong to me." At first it felt strange, almost laughable, as though she was speaking into the air. But within weeks she wrote me that not only had unexpected gifts arrived, but her expenses had shrunk, doors had opened, and she felt a new confidence every time she touched her purse. What had changed? Not the economy, not her salary, not the figures on her statement, only her concept of money itself. She no longer saw it as lifeless and hostile. She saw it as spirit, and spirit responded. So let me ask you, what image do you hold when you think of money? Do you see it as cold digits, a stranger to be chased, a master to be feared? Or can you dare to see it as a living friend, loyal and eager, spirit clothed in form? For everything you call wealth is only imagination crystallized, and imagination is God in action. See money as spirit, and you will speak to it as alive. Speak to it as alive, and it will answer. And once it begins to answer, you will know that you were never dealing with dead matter at all. You were communing with the living God in disguise. This next part changed everything for me, and it will change everything for you once you dare to practice it. It is the principle of personification, the sacred art of giving a face, a voice, and a presence to that which the world calls abstract. Why do the scriptures speak of wisdom crying out in the streets, or sin crouching at the door, or death riding upon a pale horse? Why does the prophet address the heavens and the earth as if they were listening, alive, ready to obey,